Welcome to the Painting Coach, and in this video I'm going to show you how to paint a quartered scheme of the Howling Griffons using contrast paint. And I'm also going to show you how to fix many mistakes that I made, because as I went through this tutorial, more and more things started to go wrong. But before we jump in, let me tell you why I've decided to paint this Space Marine. My good friend Pat over on the painting phase has just finished painting a Penitent's Blade army, which is a quarter scheme in blue and yellow. And he had some trouble while he was doing it, and you can go and watch the video. I'll put it in the description. He didn't enjoy the process. So I thought to myself, can I do it differently in a way that's quite enjoyable? So that was the first thing. The second thing is I wanted to paint Howling Griffons for a very long time. And when I think about Howling Griffons, I think of the Terminator painted by Drew Pallies from the Eavy Metal Team. Now, I'm using these photos with Drew's permission. It's an amazing rendition of what a Howling Griffon Space Marine should look like. So me, in a fit of optimism, set out to do exactly this and mimic what Drew had painted as best I can. Again, check out Drew's content by clicking his links in the description. He's an amazing painter. He's on the Eavy Metal Team, so he's painting the Warhammer images you see on the box art, and he's a great painter. So let's see how I did it. I got the party started by spraying the model with Wraithbone spray and then just giving it a little squirt of white scarf from above, mainly to make that helmet a bit whiter to save me some time later on. Now, I had the bright idea of using contrast paint to paint the base colours for this model. So when you're doing a quartered scheme or a half scheme, generally what the best thing to do is to paint the lighter colour first. So for me, that is yellow, and I'm using Imperial Fist yellow contrast paint. Now, this is one of the newer contrast paints, which is single pigment, which means it covers pretty well. So I'm just going to pop this on across the areas that I want to be yellow, not worrying too much about where I want the red to be, and I'll talk through that scenario a little bit in a minute. Next up, it was time for the red, and I'm sticking with contrast paint, so I'm using Baal Red contrast paint. So before I show you about how we join these two and we get that nice line, I'm just going to paint all of the areas that are away from the yellow. So we've got the arm and the leg. This goes on, again, exactly the same way as the Imperial Fist contrast paint. It's a single pigment paint, which means the pigment density is a little bit greater in it. The colour's a lot more vivid as well. So it's quite a nice paint that I really do enjoy using. I use it a lot for eye lenses, but in this instance, it covers really nicely over armour plates as well. When it came to the quarter scheme, this is where you need to take a little bit of care and attention. Now, I will say that I make mistakes here, and I am going to show you how to fix them as well a little bit later on in the video. It's really easy and straightforward. But generally, I thought to myself, I could spend ages trying to mask this all up, or I could just use a steady hand and see if I can do it free-handed. And that's what I did. So I made sure I had some paint on my brush. It's also really important that you've got a good tip on your brush to do this. Don't just dip it in the contrast paint and then paint the model. Make sure you twist it a little bit on a palette so you get that nice point. From then on, it's a case of finding that centre point, and you can see here that I've gone over that with the Imperial Fist. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, hang on, basic primary school maths says that if you mix red and yellow, you're going to get orange, and surely that's exactly the same thing that's going to happen here. Well, actually, no, and the reason for that is because of that pigment density in the Baal Red. It just covers over that yellow, covers over that Wraithbone, really easily and really nicely. And this is why we do the lighter colour first, because generally we put a darker colour on it, it'll just go over it really nicely, and that's what's happened here. So you can see we've got some nice bright red and bright yellow colours. It's almost spot on. There are a few mistakes. Like I said, I'm going to show you how to fix them, but we're going to make more mistakes first before we go in and fix the older mistakes. So with that in mind, let's paint all of the tubing, which is going to be black. Now, of course, if we get black on any of the bits we've already painted, it's going to be an absolute nightmare to fix. So we want to be as careful as we possibly can with this. I'm using black Templar contrast paint for the very simple reason that it does give you a nice little bit of a highlight. So you don't have to go and worry about fixing it later on with grey highlight. You'll get it automatically. But you need to be very careful with this. That said, the reason I haven't fixed the mistakes yet is because I know I'm going to make more, because after I finish the black Templar, I'm going to paint all of the metallics using dark aluminium from Vallejo model colour. Now, you can use whatever dark silver that you've got, whatever you prefer to use. If you've got lead belcher or Surcoat silver, absolutely fine. Again, the name of the game here is being careful and not spilling in on those areas you've already finished. It's not the end of the world if you do, but it just saves so much time if we don't have to go in and constantly make repairs. The last bit of base coating we'll do before we go in to do some of those repairs is on the crux terminators on the shoulder and the little decoration we've got on the left knee. And the colour I'm going to use to base all of that is Dawnstone. So this is a fairly straightforward step. Make sure your paint's not too thick. You might be able to get away with just one coat if you haven't got too much contrast paint on it. But if you do need a second, then take your time and apply it. Right, let's show you how to fix the first of my mistakes. And this goes for any time you use contrast paint, really. You can see on the back plate here, on the bum plate, as it were, that the red is a little bit too far over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some Wraithbone paint from the pot, and I'm going to re-establish that line that I think is the centre, and I'm going to paint the rest of the plate that needs to be the same colour, so in this case yellow, with that Wraithbone. So essentially, where you make mistakes, what you're looking to do is you may have to repaint the entirety of that plate with a base colour before reapplying the contrast paint. So because I've taken my time and my care here, I don't have to do this in too many places, only where I've spilled a little bit with the red and of course some of that silver and black colour. Now it took 2 or 3 thin coats of Wraithbone, but make sure you let it dry in between each one, and then it's a case of just going back in and reapplying the contrast paint. So you can see here with that Imperial Fist yellow going back on, it gives me a nice finish, and straight away I've managed to fix that particular mistake. That's nice and easy. There are more mistakes to come. A big thanks to Pat for hooking me up with these AK Wargame washes. He sent me the full range actually, which is very, very generous of him. So a huge, huge thanks to Pat for that. So what I thought I'd do is I'd try the black wash and the dark rust wash. Now these are enamel washes, so they should behave very similar to oil washes. You will need some methylated spirits to clean them off, so they're a little bit more involved than if you were just using an acrylic wash like Null Oil or Agrax Earthshade. So just bear that in mind before you go out and buy these. Now I started applying the black wash first across all of the silver, all of the red, and the grey on the Crux Terminatus. And it was as I was doing this that I started to realise I'd fallen into a little bit of a trap of my own making, and that was I was so keen to just crack on with the washes, I hadn't actually tested them on anything other than the model I was painting. So always have things you can test stuff on, and what I realised was I probably needed to thin these washes a little bit because all they were succeeding in doing was absolutely making a mess of the armour. Now in fairness, going across the metallics, probably because they're a glossy surface, it was okay, but going across the red armour, it was not a good look, and I just carried on making the mistake. Of course, why wouldn't I? So when I'd kind of finished all of the armor pals, I thought it was probably a good idea to start cleaning this stuff up. Now to do this, I'm using a Q-tip or a cotton bud if you're in the UK, and I dipped this in some of that Odourless white spirit, not too much, just enough, and then I started wiping it across the model in the direction that I wanted to clean stuff off. Now, in some places, this came off really nicely and really easily. In other places, it was a little bit resistant. And I started to pull off a little bit of a paint because I was scrubbing too hard. Now, had I used gloss varnish on the model, then perhaps this wouldn't have been such an issue. But generally, enamel and acrylics have got different bases. Therefore, you can put enamel onto acrylics without any issues. However, using these washes, I did come up against it. So, again, I'll show you how to repair that. I'm not worrying about it too much at the moment. I then went and used the dark rust on the yellow part of the armour, probably from the disaster of the previous step. I was a lot more deliberate with this and just focusing on specific areas. It did seem to be a bit thinner and run a lot easier than the black wash did as well. So again, that might be me and my user error. So I just worked my way around getting this into the recesses. And then when it came to cleanup, I did this exactly the same way as I did the red. So I took a clean Q-tip or cotton bud, dipped it in some of that methylated spirit, and just started to wipe in the direction I wanted to move some of that colouring. So let's just pause there. As you can see from this, it seems that the yellow looks okay, but to my eye, the red looks absolutely horrendous. Now, the whole reason I'd use contrast paint in the first place is because I wanted to give myself a little bit of a boost in terms of speed to get those base coats down, get that lining in, and I could just do a few highlights and the model would be done. But clearly I've messed up, so I need to fix it. So in order to fix it, I need to go back to the traditional layer paints. So the first thing I'm going to do is take some Mephiston Red, and I'm not going to have too much on my brush. I'm generally just going to work this in a downward motion across all of the red sections on the model. And this is going to leave the darker colour in the recesses, but those armour plates that face upwards, It's just going to give them something a little bit brighter to work with. When that was done, I continued doing this using Evil Sunz Scarlet. This was a little bit thinner, so that as it dried, it would blend more into the Mephiston Red underneath. And generally with this, I wasn't looking to paint all of the armor panels. I was just looking to paint where I think the light is going to catch the most. So that leg, for example, that was really dark, the front of the right leg, that's staying quite dark. It's just had a little bit of Mephiston Red to pick it up a little bit. But the back of it is going to be a lot brighter because it's going to catch a lot more light. I then moved to Wild Rider Red and started to put some chunky highlights down. And generally, this is looking to catch edges. It's not worrying too much about how thin it is. But if it does get a bit too thick and looks a bit unruly, you can use a bit of Evil Sunz Scarlet afterwards to go in and cover it. So far, so good. I think I managed to fix some of my mistakes with this, and it's coming together a little bit now. The red is probably a bit dull for my liking. I'd like it to be a bit more vivid. And the last thing to do is take some Fire Dragon Bright and just use this very sparingly on some of the sharper edges that are going to catch light, just to add points of interest on there. And that's the red armor finished, and hopefully it's not going to go too far to the orange colour. It is just looking a little washed out, whereas that yellow is still looking quite nice and vibrant. So to build that yellow back up, I did something very similar to the stage with the red, except I used Flash Gitz Yellow. Now Flash Gitz Yellow isn't the best paint for coverage. It's quite a nice bright yellow. So make sure you haven't got too much on your brush and you've thinned it down a little bit. And generally, I'm just highlighting big chunks of areas and using a big chunky brush for this as well. So I'm moving lots of pigment across the model. And this is just starting to brighten up those areas that are going to catch the most light. I then moved to a smaller brush and used some Dawn Yellow and went straight into my edge highlighting. Now, the Dawn Yellow is a very, very bright coloured paint. So it's really important that you use it fairly sparingly. And it's worth saying at this point that if you've scratched any paint off any edges when you're taking some of the washes away, these edge highlights are a really easy way of fixing it. Similarly, some of the lines down the centre of the torso weren't completely straight in terms of that quartering scheme. But again, that's okay because you can fix those using highlights. You don't have to go in faffing with your base colours. Use the highlights to fix them. It's so much easier. That was pretty much the armour done, so it's just time to finish off some of the other elements of the model. So for the Crux Terminatus and the skulls, I highlighted all of those, again, using Dawnstone, focusing predominantly areas that are going to catch the most light, and using that dark colour, just leaving that in the recesses. I then used a nice bright grey. I went for Grey Seer. If you've got Administratum Grey, that'll be fine as well. And again, just dragged my brush across the model, picking up those parts facing upwards that are going to catch the most light. To highlight the weapon casing, I'd originally covered it in black Templar and it looked horrendous. So I just based it with some black and then used some Eshin Grey to put a really chunky highlight down, pretty much painting all of the casing. I then went in with some Dawnstone to draw some nice thin lines. Now, you'll notice that the lines I paint here are a little thicker than what they look at the final video. And there's a reason for that. When I'm painting under camera, it's very challenging. So sometimes I'll go in and I'll correct it afterwards, but I'm painting exactly the same way as I would on camera. It's just easier because I can use my magnification, whereas when I'm painting on camera, I can't. I'm not going to bother using loads of gold. This marine is kind of looking grim darkish anyway. So to do all the gold elements, all I'm going to do is take some Nazdreg Yellow and paint that over them. Now, they're already painted silver from the previous step. So I'm just going to paint that with them. And you're all going to be shocked to hear that I'm not using chrome from Vallejo Model A in this video. And that's because I want to keep that silver quite dark. The purity seals were nice and simple. I simply based them using Caliban Green. And then when that was dry, I took a little bit of Warp Lightning and just dabbed it across the model to give a little bit of brightness. The paper, again, was very simple. I based it using Xandri Dust. And then when that was dry, I took some Screaming Skull and just painted the elements that were facing upwards. So you get a nice, easy purity seal highlight, leaving that Xandri Dust in the recesses. The last thing to do was the helmet. Now, this was mainly white anyway, but again, because I'd rushed a little bit when I was putting the contrast in, it meant I had to go back over myself to fix things. So I painted all of the helmet using Corax White. Now, over the white base, this covered nice and easily, but where I'd spilt the yellow and the red and some of the silver metallics, I did need to put 2 coats across it. I then used some Soulblight Grey and washed all of the helmet. This is a nice, easy step. Just make sure that Soulblight Grey is nice and well mixed. When that was dry, I went back in and highlighted using AK White. Now you can use whatever white you've got. If you've got white Scar, if you've got Bold Titanium White from Pro Quill, whatever white you've got is fine for this step. Generally, what I was looking to do here is just highlight the edges of the helmet that are pointing upwards. It's a very easy bit of kit to highlight. I also made sure that I painted the lenses and also the eye lenses with the bright white as well. The reason I did this is because you can take some striking scorpion green and just paint it over the eye lenses and over the lenses on the targeter, and straight away you've got a really simple and effective eye lens effect. Now, if you want to add a little bit more and feather it out, you can put a nice little glow in front of those eyes as well. And there we are. The Howling Griffon is done with probably more mistakes than I made on a single model. I think I've made on any other model I've painted on the channel. It really did go downhill fast, but hopefully you found some value in the video and I was able to show you how to save some of them. So you don't have to worry about stripping it and going back. We can just work our way through and actually get a decent looking result. Now, I do actually think this model pops quite nicely. I'm looking at it on the shelf now and it does look okay. So I'm not overly upset with how it turned out. I just wish I'd be able to mimic what I set out to do, and that was the amazing Howling Griffon by Drew. So thank you so much for watching this video. Like I said, I hope you found some value in it. I really appreciate you watching. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to the video. Check out all of my other content here, and I will see you next time.